Hello my YouTube world, this is Johnny Moe, and I'm going to do a video on deck talk. We're going to talk about all sorts of deck and give you some of my opinions, what I like, and I want you guys to give me your opinions. Fill in the spots because I've not used every deck. And in the video, I'll give you an example of what particular mower brands I'm interested in learning from you. I got a couple questions. I'm going to answer this right here in deck talk. I've got a question about the walker. I've never owned a walker. I can tell you that I've looked very extensively into walkers about 10 years ago. They might have changed some stuff. I don't know. Here's what I liked about a walker. Here's what I didn't like. First of all, walker. Smooth cut, clean. Just a nice cut, great bagging system. I thought like, wow, this could be a mower that I could use. Things I didn't like. I didn't like the way that the controls were. I'm sure I could have got used to it. Just didn't like it. Other things, I didn't like the third wheel stripe. Just didn't like it. Just didn't like the way that looked. Another thing I didn't like is the deck height exchange. You know, you're pulling pins. You got to do this. And, you know, I want to go from 4 inches down to 3.5 to 2.5 just with a pull of a pin and lifting up the deck. I'm about time. I believe this mower was too much of a time constraint issue. Another thing I didn't like, there was no way to put the grass clippings into your truck. Even though that they made a hoist system, you still had to jump up in the truck and move grass around. Whereas if you got a grass system where you can actually dump where you want to in the truck if you have to dump that way. And I also didn't like if you had to back up to a pile. You can then you dumped it and then you rolled away. Well, you still got to move that grass around on someone's property. Just didn't like that system. Didn't think it, you know, another thing I didn't like is that you had to pull some stuff apart to get your hand in there to get stuff unclogged. You know, some people say it doesn't clog much. I can guarantee you my employee would clog that pretty quickly. So, you know, lift up the front seat or pull this out, and you had to pull these pins out and put your hand in there. But don't listen to me. This is just me because I'm time conscious. Contact someone who owns a walker. People that I know that own walker love walker. There's got to be a reason behind that. Me, myself, I'm a throw and go. Put me on a high horsepower, zero-turn mower with a big opening, and let's just blow the grass down and get going. Double cut where we have to need to double cut. If it's too high, put the baggers on, upright bagger, and we're gone. You know, that's how we do it. So, now, on to Skag. Now, the Skag mower, to me, just in my opinion, I've used one. I demoed one for a day. I'm not a perfect person for this, but there's going to be some questions I'm going to ask about particular parts of a Skag that I need to answer to. You're going to have to answer it for me. But I demoed one for one day. We had a dealer move in about an hour away. I went and picked one up. I used it. Very impressed. I liked that it didn't clump in the morning. It clumped a little bit, but not very much. I like the spread pattern of it. I think the mower is very well built. If I was buying a mower and I cut all kinds of different grasses, this is the mower that I would own. Skag, to me, is a great built mower. I like the Skag. Now, some things I didn't like. Oh, you thought I was just going to tell you everything now. I'll tell you the truth, man. I'll tell you what I like and what I dislike. I thought the mower was a tad bit long. I thought the mower was a tad heavy. And I feel like even though the Velocity Pro does a very good job throwing grass, it didn't throw it far enough. It threw it about a pass and a half. It laid it out, a wide pattern, a nice wide pattern, and it laid it out perfectly fine. But in the springtime, when you're cutting Kentucky Blue, fescues, and rye mixed lawns, it can get up there. It can get up to 7 inches, and you're trying to cut it down to 3.5 inches. And I don't want it to look like a hayfield when it's done. So, the Velocity Pro, definitely that Skag deck laid it out there, but when I turned around and looked, it's like, oh, that's a little iffy. And then when I tried to double cut it, it didn't double cut very well, and it left stringers of grass. Like outside, when it comes out of the deck, it's just a cut and throw. So it's not cutting them twice. It left some huge strings of grass laid out on the lawn. Now, something I don't know. If that happens, you know, does all that turn brown over a couple days? Does that string of grass still break down and shrink down to nothing? I don't know that. I like the way it looked. If I was in the market, that's the first mower I'd go for, especially with the type of grasses that I'm cutting. My next favorite mower deck is a Turbo Force. I've owned a lot of them through the years. I love this deck. I love opening all the way up. It throws it further than a Velocity Pro. I think it does a great job of cutting. And here's something else. It will clump quicker than the Velocity will. So if you're cutting early morning grass, about halfway through the lawn, get ready because she's about to start throwing some clumps. It takes a little bit longer, but it does throw clumps. I like that mower deck. I think it's a good deck. I think Toro's a good product. They've come a long way since they bought Exmark. Obviously, they probably ripped everything off of Exmark. My third favorite deck is the Exmark Ultra Cut. Now, here's the caveat. If you're cutting manicured lawns and you can cut in ideal situations, Exmark Ultra Cut is the best. That's it. But in our field, I've never run into the ideal circumstances ever. So that's why it's third on my list. Because you got to cut between 10:30 and 5. You got to let the dew go. Because what happens, Exmark's deck is a deck that cuts, recuts again, cuts again, and then pops it out. Cuts the grass about 5 times, circulating through the chambers. If it's wet at all, it'll start to brrr, brrr, and you can hear it in there, and all of a sudden it'll go like a bunch of poop coming out the side of that mower deck. That poop is not clean upable. Unless you've got a rake, you're done. That's a mess that ain't cleaned up. Because if you raise the deck up a half inch, go over it again, that it just makes smaller poop balls. So that deck, in the ideal circumstances, cuts very, very, very well. They make a good product. It's an expensive product. These top 3 mowers that I've talked about are very, very expensive. I used to run all Exmark and Toro until they consistently were above $10,000. That's when I made the switch over to Ferris, was the first one I went to. Ferris I had the original deck, the box deck. That deck was terrible. That deck could not cut in wet, and it could not cut high grass. I had to buy a bagger for it, and I started to love the bag because I loved the way it looked. That deck was atrocious. That's why they came out with the ICD deck. So I then went to the ICD deck. Their first generation ICD deck was a total flop. It was terrible. They tried to copy the Skag deck, is what it looks like to me, and also tried to incorporate a little bit of the Ultra Cut deck with the higher baffles in the back, wide open in the front. Cut the grass door in the back and let it flow out the front. It didn't work. There was a lot of problems with that. They've had 2 generations since. I own the 3rd generation right now. What do I like about it? I like the fact that it's wide open. It does throw it out there pretty nicely. It throws it a little further than the Skag Velocity Pro. Not quite as far as the Toro. Nowhere near the Exmark. The Exmark will pump it out the side of their deck 3 full passes. And how they produce that much pressure, it's just like a hose. Exmark figured it out. When you turn a hose on, it just comes out. It's just flowing out. But if you put your thumb over the hole of the nozzle, you create pressure and you can start to shoot the water out. Well, they've built up pressure in there by cutting off some of the airflow that it forces the grass out. These bigger, wider holes can't do that. That's why they don't throw as far. I think that's a disadvantage. Now, let's go. Here's where I need your help. Okay, now a Skag mower does, because here I'll give you this. The Toro Turbo Force, I've owned a lot of them over the years. Where it struggles, and it's the only place it struggles. Let's say it's hot out. The grass starts to lose its elasticity. And it starts to come over just a little. It's still got enough to keep it green, but it's starting to dry out a little bit. It's not dry or hard, but it just kind of falls over. For some reason, when you're cutting at higher, like 3.5, 3 1/4, 3 3/4 lawns, when you're going across it, you'll turn around. You'll notice that a lot of the grass is still pushed down. It didn't pick it up and just throw it out like an Exmark. Exmark has a lot of suction, cuts it clean, and goes out. I don't know if this is a problem with Skag. It could be because of the wider deck opening. Let me know. I want to know about that. When you're cutting at 3 3/4, does it lay the lawn down or does it pick it up and cut it off clean? The ICD deck does not pick it up and cut it off clean. It lays it down also. I believe it's because it's not enough air pressure with that wider opening. ICD deck is Ferris and Snapper Pro. It's a good deck, don't get me wrong. It'll throw clumps quicker than the... it won't throw clumps as quick as the Toro Turbo Force, but once the deck's packed in there, it's all clumps. Not like the Skag. Hope we're getting a lot of information. I want some, back and forth. The deck, I've tried the Hustler. I've demoed the Hustler. I do not like Hustler. I think Hustler is the best built mower on the planet. They've taken some time. I think it's a little heavy, a little too heavy, but it's built like a tank. The welds, the pumps, everything. They just don't have a deck, period. Their deck, to me, stinks. If you own one, I'm sorry. Up here in the north, they can't... You could be cutting 3 inches of grass off, and it could just have little bit, very little bit of moisture at 11 o'clock, and it's, not cutting very cleanly. They've been through 3-4 generations of deck in the last 6 years. They've went through X1, X2, X7, VX4. I don't want anything to do with them. They're overpriced for what you're getting. They don't have a bagging system for the unit. The bagging system it came out with had so many problems, they stopped producing it. This mower is not ready for production for me, for Johnny's Mowing. That mower is a no-no. I won't even look at one. It didn't take me long, but maybe a half acre to figure it out. John Deere's another one. John Deere's deck on the surface looks good. I've done 2 tests in my lifetime with John Deere. Toro Turbo Force half, 7-iron with the other half. Toro blew it apart. Just destroyed it. Alright, here we go. X-Mark 1 half, John Deere on the other half. X-Mark blew it apart. I do not want anything to do with John Deere up here in the Northeast. I don't feel that the mower threw the grass far enough, and it didn't lay it out like a nice fan like it needs to be. It didn't cut dandelions very well. My opinion, if you want a John Deere, go ask someone who has a John Deere, and then they can give you their opinion on it. I have no idea about the runtime qualities. When I do a testing, I'll usually get 2 mowers, cut the field in half, and let's see who comes out on top. It's very clear. I'm very good with decks, guys. I'm so good with deck, and I owned Toro for so long. They actually brought their mower to me, the Stander and the G6. Before they released them, redid a field report on them. We went and cut a whole development with them. I wrote in the report I felt that the machine came up a little bit. They added a weight kit to it, the Stander. If you're going up a hill and the front end would come up, it would kick up a little bit, and it would leave little scattered patterns up the hill, like half cut, cut, like just the steps. They added a weight kit from that field report. I'm sure they got another field report saying the same thing. But I was able to give a field report before they released these mowers, so I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to mower decks. My favorite decks are cut and goes, because I want to get in, I want to get out, I want something with 30 horsepower or more. I want to blow down that grass, double cut if I have to. If it's too high, ship a bagger on and go. Boom. That's how we want to do it. So give me some information. Here's the mowers I'm really interested in. The Gravely, and when you give the information, I want you to give information. Don't tell me it's a great mower and it cuts well. Tell me how it cuts at 4 inches of grass when it's cutting off 4 inches. Tell me what you like and what you dislike. I've just told you what I like and dislike about certain decks. Please do the same. I'm interested in the Gravely. I'm also interested in the Bobcat. Very interested in Bobcat. I'll tell you why. The price point for a Bobcat is excellent. I don't like to pay over $10,000 for a high-end mower, meaning a 60-inch deck with 30 horsepower more. That's why I own Snapper Pro, because I bought my biggest one, which is a 36 horsepower Vanguard with a 61-inch deck, ICD deck, and the bagger system. So I paid $9,500 or something like that for it. And I don't want to pay over 10 grand. That's why I don't own a Skag. That's why I don't own the X-Mark and the Toro, the high-end ones. Just some tips. I'm interested in Bobcat. I'm interested in Grasshopper. These are decks that I have not played with. Let me know, guys. I'd appreciate it. Love talking deck talk with you, and you have a great day.